right, so good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're joining us for the first time, and I know we do have some new groups today, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And all month long, I've just been saying a huge thank you to all our classes for joining in. I know the last 8 months have been really trying to be a classroom teacher, and so welcome back to the classroom, whatever that looks like for you, and we really appreciate you spending some of the time with us this month as we continue to highlight amazing people and places across the globe. So today's presentation is exciting for a couple of reasons. Number one, all September long, we have been showcasing ocean plastics as an issue. This is something that's become hugely topical. A lot of classrooms and the public are really interested in this, the problem, and to find potential solutions. So we're going to keep on with that train today, and I hope you guys are excited to learn all about it. And two, we have been partnering with NOAA Marine Sanctuaries in the US for, I think, 30 plus broadcasts over the last year and a bit. It's been really exciting, highlighting some of the most incredible, pristine marine sanctuaries in the world. So today we are joined by Nicole Harris, and she is an education specialist at the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, one of the most beautiful places in the world, off the coast of one of the other most beautiful places in the world. So it's a whole bunch of beauty packed into one. So I want to welcome in Nicole, and she's going to take us away and learn about breaking down plastics in the marine sanctuary. So Nicole, thanks so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. I'm happy to be here.
Let's do it. Take us away. I'm looking very forward to the presentation.
I'm going to share my screen. It's just going to take me a minute here.
I'll let you know when it's off. Oh, I'm sorry. I hate to do this to you. I just wanted to mention we've set up a bunch of questions on Slido. So for anyone who's joining on YouTube or Facebook, our live groups don't need to do this. They can type their answers in the chat bar. We are using the Slido app today. So Slido.com with the event code PLASTIC. You can type that event code in, take part in some interactive polls and quizzes, and share your questions and upvote your favorites. We haven't done much of that this year. I apologize for the oversight. And with that, let's dive into the top. Thanks, Nicole.
Awesome. Okay, you can see my slide good, Jesse?
Yeah, we're perfect.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Nicole Harris, and like Jesse said, I'm the education specialist with NOAA's Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, and today I'm joining you guys from my home in Port Angeles, Washington. So I thought before we get started, I'd just give you guys a little bit of background on myself and how I kind of got into this career that I have right now. So as an education specialist, I get to share my love and passion for the marine environment with all sorts of audiences. Sometimes my work looks like guided tide pool walks and community presentations. Sometimes I get to do education programs with students and teachers where the beach is truly our classroom and we explore and investigate ocean ecosystems. And sometimes I get the chance to provide a presentation to a national audience like this with Jesse and Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Thanks, Jesse. I grew up in the state of Oregon, which is a coastal state, but I lived in this dry, high desert town of Pendleton. And I didn't get to spend a lot of time at the ocean as a kid, but I did spend lots of time on the Umatilla and the Columbia rivers, and of course, always have loved water. So out of my first stint in college where I focused on education, I jumped at this opportunity to be a deckhand on a commercial fishing boat in Southeast Alaska. And this was really the big game changer for me in the ocean. I worked, ate, slept, and lived on a small fishing boat on the ocean with humpback whales as my neighbors. And frankly, I was hooked. I fell in love with the ocean and all of these amazing resources we depend on from a healthy ocean. And so I find I kind of have the perfect job now because National Marine Sanctuaries are all about conservation. And so I get to spend my time helping people fall in love with the same resources I fell in love with and coming up with ways to conserve those resources so they can be around for a really long time. So we're going to talk about plastics today, but first I want to tell you guys all about NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. So National Marine Sanctuaries are a network of marine protected areas or underwater treasures. They encompass more than 600,000 square miles of marine and Great Lakes waters. The network includes a system of 14 national marine sanctuaries, as well as Papahanao, Mokuakea, and Rose Atoll Marine National Monuments. National marine sanctuaries are in place, like we said, to support conservation of these special ocean places to ensure that they are around for current and future generations. And we do this through management, research, and education. So on this map here, you can see a bunch of little blue dots, and each one represents one of the 14 national marine sanctuaries. The blue triangles, they might be a little hard to see. They're out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. These represent our marine national monuments, and the yellow boxes represent newly proposed areas. So soon to be, but not yet, national marine sanctuaries. So this red star right here is where I work at Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. And Olympic Coast is part of the National Marine Sanctuaries of the West Coast. So it's Olympic Coast and our 4 sanctuaries down in California. And then we have our Pacific Islands region. So that's those sanctuaries that are literally out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And then we have our Northeast and Great Lakes sanctuaries, where there's some incredible habitats and a lot of maritime heritage with these kind of ghostly shipwrecks. And then we have our Southeast region, and these are our kind of coral reef sanctuaries. So I'm curious, and this is our chance for our first survey, which region of national marine sanctuaries do you guys live closest to?
Yeah. So while you ask that, I've opened up the poll on Slido, and our group on Slido mentioned that they're in the Northeast and Great Lakes region. Our live classes are in Northeast and the West Coast regions. And if you're on YouTube, you want to share your answer there. I know we've got a class in Hoover, Alabama, and welcome into them, Jess Richardson's class. So great answer, guys. If anyone else wants to answer on Slido, we got another West Coast region there. So West Coast and Northeast, no Pacific Islanders today, it looks like.
It's really early for them in the Pacific Islands, so I'm not surprised that they didn't join this yet. But that's great. I'm so glad that we have people from all over our nation here. All right, so now I'm going to orient you a little bit to Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. So this sanctuary is located off the outer coast of Washington. You can see in the map here on the right that the boundary is outlined in red. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a dog facing west sometimes. We get that comment a lot. We are Washington's only national marine sanctuary. We run 40 miles offshore in the northern part of the sanctuary and 25 miles offshore in the southern part. And our boundary comes in and hugs that continental shelf. We have a rich maritime history with over 200 historical shipwrecks documented in sanctuary waters. The sanctuary lies within the usual and accustomed hunting and fishing areas of 4 coastal treaty tribes, the Makah, the Quileute, and the Hoh tribe, and the Quinault Indian Nation. And these tribes have lived with and depended on the resources of Olympic Coast literally for thousands of years. And today, these sovereign nations are co-managers of these ocean resources. Olympic Coast encompasses over 3,000 square miles of ocean and coastal waters with many different habitats. We've got sandy beaches, rocky intertidal zones, kelp forests, open ocean, deep sea canyons, and this makes it the perfect place for a wide variety of marine life to coexist. In fact, we happen to be one of the most diverse and productive marine ecosystems in our world, with 29 species of marine mammals, 128 species of sea and shore birds, and hundreds of fish and invertebrate species. I would love to know, do you guys have a favorite marine mammal or animal?
Ooh, so we've opened it up on Slido already. If anyone wants to type in the YouTube chat bar, you can as well. And let's see. I'm going to go to the Stewarttown Stingers, see if you guys have a favorite marine animal. So what do you guys think? You can deep your mic and let me know. Anything that jumps to mind? Georgetown.
Dolphin.
Any favorite animal?
You're saying jellyfish,
Dolphin?
dolphin.
Okay. Fish, dolphins. I love it. Awesome. Hello, Miss Camarina's class. What do you guys think? Just unmute your mic. All the teachers can unmute your mics. You're all good to go. And Miss Miller's class. What do you guys think? Harbor seals.
Oh, harbor seals are the cutest.
They are. Well, my favorite is the manta ray or great white shark, just giant marine megafauna. They're pretty spectacular. We've gotten some nods from Miss Camarina's group. So yeah, Nicole, take us away. Some favorite marine animals.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'll just say my favorite marine animal is a nudibranch, which are little marine sea slugs. So they don't get all the attention they deserve. All right. So currently, there are many challenges facing the health of our ocean. And we have this one big ocean. And so these challenges go across the globe, including marine debris. Marine debris is a global problem. So what is marine debris? Well, according to NOAA, their official definition is any persistent solid material that is manufactured or processed and directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally disposed of or abandoned into the Great Lakes or marine environment. So I think the key points here are it's man-made, it's persistent, which means it stays around for a long time, and it's in our marine environment. But what is this problem with plastic? Well, data shows us that plastics are the most common form of marine debris, and this makes sense. Just take a look around your space right now, just right where you guys are at your desk or in your homes, and take notice of what is plastic around you. Just right here at my space, my laptop has plastic, my keyboard and my monitor have plastic. I've got plastic pens, I've got plastic phone chargers, even my eyeglasses are plastic. Plastic is truly everywhere. It's in our home, it's in our offices, it's in our schools, and it's in our ocean. And our ocean is filled with items that do not belong there. Huge amounts of consumer plastics, metals, paper, textiles, derelict fishing gear, and other lost or discarded items enter the marine environment every day. While it is hard to say exactly how much plastic is in the ocean, science estimate that in 2010, 8 million metric tons entered the ocean. It's kind of hard to even imagine what 8 million metric tons is, but it's roughly the weight of 90 aircraft carriers in plastic. That's a lot of plastic that enters our ocean. And unlike other kinds of waste, plastic doesn't decompose. That means that plastic can stick around indefinitely, wreaking havoc on our marine ecosystems as it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. So plastics come in many different forms, right? But where does it come from? Well, just think of all that plastic when we kind of took a little audit of our space right here. You know, I came up with quite a bit of plastic right in front of me. And then we think about what we use during the day. We've got our toothbrushes and our hairbrushes and our shampoo bottles, maybe our lunch containers. All of these things get used and eventually get thrown out. Many plastics are in fact designed to be used once and then thrown out, like water bottles or takeout containers. And so if this waste isn't disposed of or managed properly, it can end up in our ocean. So where does it come from? Well, it comes from a variety of land-based sources. And when we have these big rain and wind events, all of this plastic can travel down our watersheds through storm drains and streams and end up right in our ocean. So no matter where you live, whether you live far away from the ocean or if you live right on its shores, your actions can impact the ocean. So we're going to keep going here on plastic, but before I move on, I'm curious if you guys are familiar with this term. Has anyone ever heard of nurdles? What is a nurdle?
Ooh, what is a nerdle? It's not the noise you make when you're blowing bubbles in the bathtub. So we've got the question up on Slido for anyone who might be interested. If anyone wants to type in the chat bar too, you can.
Nerdle.
Let's see. Microplastic, good guess from the Steeltown Stingers. I like it on the chat bar. Let's see. I mean, it looks like you got some pictures of them. We haven't heard of them in Miss Miller's class, okay? Miss Camarena.
Microplastics was a great answer, actually.
So, we can stick with that.
Yeah, the way to go, you guys. If you guys look at this picture here, you can see that those are nurdles, those little white plastic pellets that you see. They're not perfectly round. And while these are clear, nurdles can actually be many, many colors. And they are, like I said, pre-production plastic. So this means that anything that's made out of plastic likely started its life as a nurdle. Nurdles can be found in factories where they are turned into other plastic items, or they can be found on big container ships being shipped across our world ocean. And unfortunately, like you can see in this picture, they can also be found on our beaches. So we know there's a lot of plastic in our world, and we know there's a lot of plastic in our ocean. So what are those impacts that happens to our ocean with all this plastic in there? Well, we know of really two main ways that plastic impacts wildlife in our ocean. One is through entanglement. So many marine animals like whales and dolphins, sea lions and sea turtles become entangled in larger plastics like fishing line and gear, fishing gear or rope. And entanglement can unfortunately lead to injury, illness, suffocation, starvation, and even death. And another way is through ingestion. Animals such as sea turtles, seabirds, and marine mammals have been known to ingest marine debris. Smaller plastic items like balloons and plastic bags, food wrappers and bottle caps, and even small bits of plastic fragments are dangerous to our ocean animals. They can be mistaken for food, or sometimes an organism's natural food is attached to that debris, and that's how they end up ingesting it, or sometimes they just accidentally ingest it. However it gets in there, it can lead to loss of nutrition, internal injury, intestinal blockage, starvation, and even death. And I know because Jesse and I talked about it earlier, but before this presentation, Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants actually had a presentation where there was a live dissection of a seabird. And if you guys weren't able to tune into that, I would recommend going back and viewing that recorded version because it's very interesting. It's hard pressed to find a seabird that doesn't have a little bit of plastic in its body anymore. So now we have microplastics. Not only do we have all these big pieces of plastic, we've got microplastics. And someone gave that answer for what Nerdles are, which I love. And talk about breaking down plastics in the ocean. Microplastics are literally broken down plastic, less than 5 millimeters in length, or about the size of a sesame seed, or smaller, of course. So microplastics is actually an emerging field of study. Not a lot is known about microplastics and their impacts yet. What we do know is that microplastics come from a variety of sources, including larger plastic pieces that have been broken apart, resin pellets used for plastic manufacturing, those are those nurdles we were talking about, or they come in the form of microbeads, which are very small manufactured plastic beads used in health and beauty products like toothpaste and face wash. Thankfully for us in the US, microbeads have been banned in personal care products like our toothpaste and our face wash since 2018. But plastic microbeads first appeared in those personal care products, which means they were intentionally put in those products about 50 years ago. So there were plenty of years when our toothpaste and our face wash did contain some microplastics. So microplastics or microfibers are so small that often it requires a microscope to accurately view them. So we have big plastic in the ocean. We have little pieces of plastic in the ocean. We have animals ingesting plastic. We have animals getting entangled in it. It's even found at the very depths of our ocean. So what can we do about it? This stuff's my favorite part to talk about because we all need to realize we can actually do something about this plastic problem. So one of the ways we can help to better understand what kind of debris is actually out there is through regular monitoring. Lots of organizations do regular, consistent marine debris monitoring. And here at Olympic Coast, we love to get students involved. 4th and 5th grade students along Olympic Coast participate in a program called Ocean Science. And one of the things we like to do on this field trip is to conduct marine debris surveys. Now, we always clean up the beach as we leave the beach. We always want to leave it a little bit better than when we showed up. But if we have the opportunity to conduct a 100-meter NOAA marine debris survey and data collection, it really helps to bring a greater awareness of what is on the beach and how it could impact the habitat and organisms that live there. It also provides us with collected data that's following the NOAA Marine Debris Protocol that can then be entered into this larger national data set. Now, NOAA offers some great resources if you guys are interested in conducting your own marine debris surveys. I highly recommend checking out NOAA Marine Debris Educators Toolkit. That'll provide everything you guys need to know to start your own marine debris monitoring program. And there's also a really cool app called NOAA Marine Debris Tracker app. And this is good for kind of informal data collection. You just find yourself at the beach or your riverbanks, and you can just click on that app and enter what you picked up. And you can pick the NOAA marine debris data on that app so that you're still entering it into this larger data set. So another way that we're working on student monitoring is we're just starting this, but getting a microplastic study started with a few high school science classrooms. So following a protocol that the Washington Department of Ecology is using that was actually created by Sea Grant, Florida to monitor for microplastics in sand samples. This is a really important study to undertake. So as microplastics and microfibers end up in our marine environment, they can also end up in really important economic species like razor clams. And I'm going to say, side note, if you haven't had a fried razor clam yet, I highly recommend it. They're delicious. High school students along Olympic Coast will be looking for microplastics and microfibers in sand samples that they collect from their local beaches. They bring that sample back into their classroom, and then the students will mix that sample with water, separating the sand from the debris. And some of that debris is going to be natural, and some of it's going to be the man-made debris that we're looking for. And then they run those samples through a vacuum filtration process. And that leaves us with a filter holding on to those microfibers and other debris that we can see through a microscope like this. So if you guys can see this little blue string right here, we could not see this with our eyes when we were looking at that sample, but once it went through that process, it was illuminated underneath the microscope. So it's kind of amazing what we can't see, but is still there. And then we have beach cleanups. Now, beach cleanups are a great way to get debris off our beaches, which keeps it out of the ocean, and anyone can participate in a community beach cleanup. We have a program here on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State called Washington Coast Savers. And this is a program of the Washington Clean Coast Alliance, and they've been conducting beach cleanups along Washington State and coastal beaches for well over a decade. And through over that decade plus years that they've been doing this, they've organized over 20,000 volunteers, and they've actually removed over 1 million pounds from Washington State coastal beaches. So it really adds up. That's a lot of plastic and debris that we kept from going back into our ocean environment. Washington Coast Savers is also working closely with teachers now because, as we all know, our world's a little bit different as we are dealing with COVID-19 and how that affects our ability to get out there and do some of these things. And so they're working closely with students to have them do neighborhood cleanups and schoolyard cleanups. Anything we can do helps keep that debris out of the ocean. And then we have these ocean guardian schools, and they truly are ocean guardians. Ocean guardian schools are recognized for their efforts to protect the ocean. One of our ocean guardian schools in Warrington, Oregon, had a bench that is made from recycled bottle caps. These students, and I just like to preface this by saying this is a preschool. These preschool students saved up bottle caps and collected bottle caps from beach cleanups, and then they turned them over to this company that makes these buddy benches. And now they have this buddy bench in their schoolyard. So not only are they reusing plastic waste, so turning it into something useful and long-term, but they're also creating a space for friendliness and support in their school environment. And these same ocean guardians created some really awesome window art using beach debris to create fun and playful long-term art. I also like to remind students that you guys have loud and powerful voices. Don't underestimate sharing your opinion and what you want with your greater community. Here in Port Angeles, Washington, we had some students, just 2 students that were part of a school program that was investigating plastics. And these 2 students got so interested that they continued to do some research on their own. And this research led them to the decision that they needed to act. Something had to be done. And so these 2 4th grade students went to their local city council meeting and asked our city council members for a plastic bag ban. Their actions inspired other adults within the community who also started to ask for this plastic bag ban. And I would say that these two fourth grade students were largely responsible for a plastic bag ban, or really we called it a reusable bag bill, that eventually passed in Port Angeles, Washington. So students, you guys can make a lot of changes in this world. So there are cool things happening all over the place with a ton of creative ways that individuals and groups are engaging in reducing plastic pollution. There's an organization out of Bandon, Oregon called Washed Ashore, and they utilize debris collected from beaches to create these large art sculptures like this puffin that you see. And these sculptures travel around the country so that anyone can walk up to one of these sculptures and recognize debris that could have been theirs. And here in Washington State, Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary partnered with Washington Coast Savers and an organization called Million Waves, who uses plastic water bottles to create 3D prosthetic limbs. And we have a short video to watch that I'd like to share with you. Jesse, you want to cue that up?
I literally woke up my wife in the middle of the night, which is not uncommon.
Right.
And I just said, hey, I got this idea. You know, I think somebody should do this.
Yeah.
What if we did this? You know, what if doing something was better than doing nothing? So my name's Chris Moriarty, and this is my wife, Laura, and we were actually the founders of the Million Waves Project.
We are so fortunate to be here at Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, which is one of the most beautiful and diverse areas in the world. We have the smallest little animals in the world, like plankton, that are abundant off our coast, which brings in some of the largest animals like humpback whales and blue whales, and they all come here to feed, which is why getting the plastics out of the ocean and off the beach is so important. If the plastics stay out there, and it could lead to their death, it could lead to the entanglement. So we just want to make sure that we keep this place as special and as natural as possible.
With Million Waves projects, our plan is to try to reclaim as much ocean plastic as possible, and then we actually convert that ocean plastic into filament for 3D printers, and then we use those 3D printers to print limbs. Kind of taking two different concepts, bringing them together to solve two problems at once. We're obviously not the first people who thought about cleaning up the oceans, and we're not the first people who thought about making limbs cheaply for kids and adults who need them, but pretty much one of the first groups to decide to actually bring those two ideas together to try to do as much good as possible. These are wrist activated, so this will allow you to...
All right. Just so you guys know, that was just a couple minutes of a 6-minute video. So we'll provide the link for you guys if you'd like to go back and watch that entire video to learn more about Million Waves and, you know, some of the kids that they work with, including Abby, who's really helped them kind of create a better prosthetic. So that was awesome. I can't wait to hear what kind of ideas you guys have about how we can help change this platform.
Oh, you've cut out for a minute, Nicole. Well, let's get Nicole back and we'll... There we go.
All right.
Oh, you're back. I think you're back now.
I'm back.
Here's your concluding statement. There you go. Do tell her.
Sorry guys. I'll just wrap this presentation up, and then I can't wait to hear some of the ideas you guys have. But although you may not remember a time without plastics, they haven't been around for very long in human history. They didn't start being mass produced and used regularly in households until like the mid 1900s. So it's only been about 75 years that we've had all of this plastic inundating our lives. We do know that these plastics are persistent and long-lasting, but with such a short history, the absence of reliable data and only a few peer-reviewed studies exploring these topics, it turns out there's still a lot about plastics in the ocean and Great Lakes that we don't know, including how long they last or if some materials will ever fully go away. So it's up to everyone, all of us, to come up with ideas to reduce the use of plastics while also taking action to reduce plastic pollution that already exists in our land and in the sea. So through innovative thinking, and I know you guys can do it, we can make a difference. The ocean depends on us. So now I'm super curious to know if you guys have any ideas or want to share ways that we can reduce plastic pollution.
Fantastic. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for such a lovely presentation. As always, it's such a thrill to get to highlight Noah's amazing work and that super inspiring video. Geez, that was awesome. So I have linked that into the comment section or the chat bar for everyone on YouTube, so you can check that out. All our live classes, I'll make sure you get it as well as all the resources and links to all the amazing campaigns and projects that Noah's doing that Nicole shared with us today. So we're going to go live to our classes. If you have ideas for your class and how you can take part and reduce your plastic consumption, great. If you have questions for Nicole, we'd love to hear those. And to Mr. Richardson and Ms. Ort's class and any other classes that might be joining us on YouTube, welcome in. Looking forward to your queries as well. So I want to start with Ms. Miller's class. We're going to go to Amanda Park in Washington, Ms. Miller's group. You guys want to take us away and ask a question? Go for it.
All right.
There we go.
They are being really quiet right now.
That happens. That's half the fun. We can always come back and see if you have a question in a minute.
I put it in our Zoom chat that they can ask questions and respond.
Perfect. So I'll check in a minute. We had a little bit of reverb there. So I'll go to the Stewarttown Stingers joining us in Georgetown, Ontario, Ms. Milne's group. So Ms. Milne's class, you guys are in. If you have any questions or things that you can do to help reduce your plastic, share away.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So our question was, is there a difference between plastic that sinks and plastic that floats? And is one more dangerous in the oceans than the other?
Great question.
That is a great question. Thank you. So yes, there is plastic that sinks and plastic that floats. If you guys look underneath, a lot of plastic will have a number on it. So often you can turn a bottle upside down and you'll see those little arrows and it'll have a number. And that number actually is telling you what that plastic is made up of, what the properties of that plastic are. And so we find that like 1s and 2s, those are the really common ones, like plastic water bottles. Those do a lot of floating. Although if they don't have a lid and they get filled up with water or sand, even those plastics that float can make it all the way down to the bottom of the sea. And then we have other plastic material like fishing ropes and fishing gear, and that actually does sink to the bottom as well. And that can become a huge problem. Is one more dangerous than the other? That's a really good question. I don't know, actually, if one is more dangerous than the other. I mean, I think the plastic that floats probably interacts with more marine animals and also has the potential to complicate some of the marine traffic that we have. It can get in the way of that. But at the same time, I know that ROVs, which are these remotely operated vehicles, they're really changing our world and allowing us to see some of these deep sea environments that we don't often get to put our eyes on. And we can see debris that's at the very bottom of the ocean down there. And while it may not seem like it interacts with a lot of wildlife, it definitely changes the seafloor and changes the habitat that's down there. And sometimes, this just recently happened actually, that debris can actually interfere with ROVs and their missions. They can get wrapped up in some of that debris down there.
That is a fantastic answer to that question. There's so many different talks that we've done in the last few weeks that I can link to about everything you just discussed. So for anyone who's tuning in, check out our YouTube channel. There's on pretty much every element of that Nicole was able to mention. Miss Miller, I'm going to share your question in just a minute. Miss Camarena joining us in Compton, California. I want to bring you in. So demute your mic and you can share that question live. You just got to unmute your mic on the bottom of your screen. There you go. You're good.
I'm trying to get one of my students ready so she can ask her question. She has a really good question. Go ahead, London, and ask.
How many water bottles do you guys find a day?
About how many water bottles do you find per day?
So how many water bottles do you find every day, Nicole? Either
That's
at
not-
or around the world?
That's an awesome question. I love that. So unfortunately, I have not been able to get out to our sanctuary as often as I like to due to some of our restrictions with COVID-19. However, if I'm just walking around our town, I see easily a dozen water bottles that are carelessly tossed out on the street or sticking out of garbage cans. I can tell you that I wish I had this picture I could pull up for you guys, but we conduct regular NOAA marine debris surveys along our coast, and that's just 100 meters of a beach that people will do every month. And we have a picture where 1 month someone found 100 plastic bottles in a 100-meter stretch of the beach. And I can tell you that plastic water bottles are one of the most common debris items that we find along our coast when we do beach cleanups, which is why I think Million Waves decided to turn them into plastic prosthetic limbs.
Yeah, we've been highlighting a lot of programs lately that upcycle some of the waste material into something that's usable. Million Waves is a particularly fantastic example, but sustainable textiles we covered the other day with Dr. Teese. We've done Burio, turning it into shoes, sunglasses, skateboards, and more. So there's lots of great projects out there doing exactly this. I think the stat for the world, which is deeply distressing, is it's about a garbage truck every minute of plastic goes right into the ocean. So if you think about that and think about the sort of impact that you guys can make as a classroom community, it really is quite substantial because it really is a tremendous issue worldwide. Let me ask Noah's class a question. So Isabel had a question. Have you done some studies on some of the wildlife that eats plastic? What's going on with things that are eating this plastic that's going in the water, Nicole?
So again, that's a really great question. I personally have not done studies, but just like we were mentioning the previous presentation on dissecting that seabird, there is researchers that are working extensively on understanding how these animals are ingesting these plastics and then what happens to them. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of the times we don't have the chance to really investigate what's happening to these animals until they've already died. And then we can go in and really see how much plastic they have inside their bodies. I know that one of the activities we do with kids when we have the opportunity is based on a real event that happened where a gray whale washed up off the shores right out of Seattle, actually. And they did a necropsy on this animal, and they were able to pull out and categorize all of the debris that this amazing marine mammal ingested. And so when we present this to students, we can really look at what kind of debris is getting in there and then come up with those ideas of how we can stop that debris from getting in there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nicole. All right, I want to take a question from our AP Environment class in Birmingham, Alabama, Miss Wirt's class. So is the marine debris survey data sets available for use in classes? Can we get this data that you talked about and actually utilize it and learn from it?
Oh, that's a great question. So, gosh, I am going to have to check with NOAA Marine Debris on how accessible their data set is. I know that NOAA does have a data in the classroom program that you can utilize real data. And that's a great way to kind of practice summarizing and really kind of coming up with some of the answers to your questions. But I feel like I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I would love to provide you a better answer.
Yeah, we covered one of the heads of Marine Debris Tracker, one of the original people, Catherine Youngblood, the other day on our program. So she highlighted a lot of cool education programs. That video, again, is on our YouTube channel. And on the bottom of our screen, there's a link where you can check out more that we've got at the beginning of the session. So if you're keen on Debris Tracker, amazing app, amazing program, lots of great educational resources. So we'll do 2 more questions for our live class in Ms. Miller's group. Marley wants to know, would the water be better if we used paper instead of plastic?
I would say yes. I think that as we know, paper does decompose, so it doesn't last. It's not persistent, right? Like that plastic is. So that paper would actually go away. And I know that just as an example, because we happen to be doing some deep sea dives off the coast of Washington right now, where you can tune into nautiluslive.org and see the deep sea of Olympic Coast live as it's happening. But sometimes ROVs need to get rid of weight before they can pick up some of their samples that they're taking. It's a balance. And so within the sanctuary, we ask them to drop burlap sacks, which will eventually degrade and not become a harmful addition to this ocean seafloor. So I would say similar to that, yes, paper would be better than plastic. But you do need to be careful because a lot of our paper cups are actually lined in plastic. So it's not just paper that you're using.
It is complicated, and I don't think anyone goes into their day by day going, oh, wow, I want to use so much plastic and throw it all out. It is hard to avoid plastic in everyday society, and plastics are really, really useful material. We have built up our civilization in the last 100 years largely on the back of plastic in a variety of ways. So it's useful. It's been good for us. We're recognizing this problem in a big way now. But there are a ton of things that you can do at home, in the classroom to help make a big difference. Litterless lunches is a really easy way. Use a reusable straw if you're going to do that. Reusable bags at the grocery store. Think of the plastic in your life that you're going to use literally one time and throw straight out, and try to find ways to avoid that. And there are usually a lot of opportunities to do that. All right, I want to go to Miss Cameron for one last question, and then Miss Ord on YouTube, you have a really cool question, but I think it's quite a long answer, so I'll connect you with Nicole so you can ask it in person afterwards, because it's awesome. But Miss Camarena, if you want to share one of your questions live, come on back in and mute your mic. You're good to go.
Okay, I have a question from my student Osvaldo. Go ahead, Osvaldo.
How long, is there any type of plastic that does decompose or dissolve?
That's an awesome question, Osvaldo. Thank you for asking that. So this is where we really get to talk about ingenuity and creative thinkers, right? So I know that they've started making some plastics out of corn, and that plastic does decompose. There's also, you can buy, think of plastic forks and plastic spoons. They'll have decomposable plastic forks and spoons. However, you want to make sure that you understand how that plastic is actually decomposed. I happen to have a worm compost in my backyard, but if I were to throw those plastic forks in there, it wouldn't decompose in my worm compost. It takes a big industrial composter to decompose some of that plastic. But I think that we have a lot of people who are still working on that problem too, so.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually. So one of the things we had in a session yesterday was, does biodegradable mean like a good thing? And biodegradable is a very iffy term. It can mean a lot of greenwashing, actually, where it means biodegradable under industrial processes. So there's a lot of solutions that, if you're buying a plastic material, just be cognizant of that fact. If you're using things like metal or paper, you're much safer with regards to potentially not creating a bigger plastic pollution problem. And one thing we discussed in the Seabird dissection earlier today was balloons. We all love balloons. We use them for celebrations our whole lives. There are alternatives, and if you do have to use them, make sure you're using them inside where you can dispose of them properly and they don't fly into the air and potentially land in places like the Olympic Coast Marine Sanctuary. So
right.
A great series of questions today, guys. I love the enthusiasm. I love the questions. Nicole, I want to turn it to you if you have one last message for us before we wrap up today.
Yeah, well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys for joining the session. I really loved all of your questions. I think that it's important that we allow our students to really dive deep into this plastic pollution problem. And I just want you guys to know that you inspire me with these ideas and opportunities that you guys can think of. And I feel very confident that there's a collective power for us to solve this plastic pollution problem. And I am thankful that you guys are part of it.
Fantastic. Well, Nicole, this was great. We're going to share with all our classes some resources that you passed along to me where kids can learn more and keep the excitement going. At the end of every broadcast, I bring in our teachers. So Miss Miller, Miss Camarena, if you want to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell before we wrap up. Thanks for joining us today, guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.